nerds, what's up? So sometimes you'll read a book and then later it continues to grow on you. And sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the opposite happens. And I guess it dies on you? I don't know. As a reviewer now, I post like permanent reviews that people consistently look at. And it doesn't happen super often, but every once in a while, the more distance I get from a book, the more I wish I could go back and kind of change my rating and change my mind on what I said about that book. So today I thought it would be interesting to set the record straight on a couple of books that I wish I could change my rating on or explain differently. So I have 4 of them, 2 of them that I actually would give a lower rating now than I did at the time, and 2 books I actually like more the more distance I get from them. And then 1 bonus book that we'll talk about at the end. Let's get into it. Okay, this first one is actually a book I reviewed somewhat recently, and that's The Frugal Wizard's Guides to Medieval England. For Surviving Medieval England. I never get that right. By Brandon Sanderson. This is one of the secret projects from the year of Sanderson, and this one's kind of interesting because what I realized is I've actually never just straight up reviewed a Sanderson book. That might sound shocking to some of you since I'm such a huge Sanderson fan, but really the first book that came out when I was doing my channel was Rhythm of War, and instead of reviewing it, I did an Every Cosmere mention. And since then, I have done an Every Cosmere mention about every Sanderson book that comes out. I didn't review the Skyward series because they were YA, I just read them personally. So when this came out, I didn't really know what to do with it because it wasn't Cosmere, but it was a new adult Sanderson book. So I just straight up reviewed it. And because of the algorithm and how popular Sanderson is, I wanted to get my review out very quickly. So I read this book in a day and then I think filmed and released my review video like a day later, maybe a couple days, but it was very, very fast. And usually I am able to let books sit more with me before I post a review. Like generally on my channel, you're probably not seeing a review until like a full week after I've read a book, just because of my posting schedule. So this was really unique in that way. Like I was posting this review much faster than normal. And I was kind of caught up in the hype. I had read it in a day and it wasn't my favorite, but I was like, you know, whatever, I'll just give it 4 stars. But then like the longer I thought about the book, I was like, I kind of just didn't really like it. It had fun moments, like I didn't hate it, but I was like 4 feels high, especially as I'm reading other books and the other books I'm giving 4 stars. So to set the record straight, I actually think A Frugal Wizard is only a 3-star book for me. I actually went and updated my Instagram to reflect that. My YouTube review obviously is always going to say 4 stars, but yeah, this one I think was definitely one of those like I reviewed it too quick and didn't let it sit. Not the worst book by means, but definitely one of my least favorite Sandersons, and so I think it needs a 3-star. Okay, the next book I actually read several years ago, and oddly enough, the review for this book is the most viewed video on my channel, which is crazy to me because I feel like this book is such a random book I reviewed and isn't even really like the books I cover a lot on my channel, but that's The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And actually my original review was saying that it was slightly overrated, like not a ton, but people were like going on and on and on and on about how amazing, incredible, and 5-star book this was. And so I read it, and I read it extremely quickly. It was an easy read, there were enjoyable parts, but the ending really bothered me. And so I gave it 4 stars. The ending bothered me because I felt like it was extremely predictable, and I felt like it was a little bit damaging the message it was sending about mental health. But I was like, well, everyone loves this book, so maybe it's just me, and it was a fast read, and I did read it quickly, so I must have enjoyed it. 4 stars. The more I think about the ending of this book, and I'm not going to talk about it obviously because I don't want to spoil it, the more and more damaging I feel like it is to mental health. The idea that, you know, it's that typical thing people say about depression, that somehow like if you just had a different perspective, your depression would go away. And I know that's not exactly what it's saying, but I do feel like it gives those vibes. And because there's only one way this book could end, that bothered me as I read the book. So I would lower this rating now. I think looking back, this book is probably like a 2.5 to 3 stars for me now. And even though I know this is such a beloved book, so this will be a very unpopular opinion, the messaging of this book just continues to bother me the further I get away from it. Okay, now let's go on to books that I appreciate more the further I've gotten from them. Now this first book is cheating a little bit because I don't actually think I would change my rating on it. I gave it a 4-star at the time, but I remember thinking I was really hovering between a 3.5 and a 4-star, and I ended up just giving it the 4, but now I feel like it's a solid 4, and that is Before They Are Hanged by Joe Abercrombie. At the initial time after I finished this, I thought it was much weaker than the Blade itself. Maybe not much, but I just kind of like, I didn't understand where it was going. I thought, oh, this is just the classic. The second book's kind of the weakest. But then once I finished the third book in the trilogy, I was like, oh, I get it now. I get what the second book was doing. I understand what it was setting up. I understand. And in fact, I ended up making a whole video about the anti-hero's journey. And I feel like this book actually was pivotal in the trilogy for me understanding how Abercrombie was putting the hero's journey on its head and what he was trying to accomplish with the first law. And so I am sorry before they are hanged. I am sorry that I said you had the sophomore slump. You didn't. Okay, and my last book that I'm going to talk about in this context that I would give a higher rating, I think, today would be The Truth by Terry Pratchett. So you guys know I love Discworld, and most Discworld books have gotten 4 stars. 4 stars or above, 4, 4.5, or 5, and I've only given a couple 3 stars. The Truth is one that I gave 3 stars. And it's interesting because The Truth was the 3rd Discworld book I ever read. I read Color of Magic and then The Light Fantastic, and I, on popular opinion, loved those. I know people say those are some of the worst of Discworld. I love them. But reading those 2 first and not knowing a ton about Discworld in general meant that I thought all of Discworld was that, like kind of a satirization of fantasy in general. And while that is true, Discworld always satirizes fantasy, there's often themes for each book, like some of them take more, like feminism or death or movies. What was the one? I can't remember the one that does movies. Moving Pictures. Oh, Moving Pictures, right? Satirizes like Hollywood. I didn't know that at the time, so I picked up The Truth next just because Brandon Sanderson said it was his favorite. So I was like, oh, you can read them out of order. I'll go read The Truth. And I was like, this is about journalism. Like, what is this even about? And so, like, I enjoyed it because I enjoyed it, but I gave it 3 stars because it just didn't feel like it hit as hard. Well, now that I've read more Discworld, I think I'm up to like 10 or 11 Discworld books. I understand that that's par for the course, and I think I get it more. Do you know what I mean? Like, I get what Discworld's trying to do. So I feel like if I went back and read The Truth, I would like it more. I don't think it would be a 5-star still. I don't think I'd like it as much as like Guards or Weird Sisters, but I definitely think I'd like it more now understanding kind of more what it was trying to accomplish. Okay, and finally, the last book I want to talk about is a book that I wonder if I reread now, if I would like it more. And that book is going to be Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. I'm kind of like in my Gaiman renaissance right now because I've been reading a lot of him. For context, Neverwhere was my first book I ever read of his. My sister gave it to me, I think back in 2016. It was a while ago. And it was my first one. And at the time, I was just reading a lot more like classic high fantasy. This was my Wheel of Time, Brandon Sanderson, Lightbringer kind of era of reading, which you can kind of see similar tones. And so when I read Neverwhere, I was like, it's fine. I gave it 3 stars. I was like, it's okay. Now, I didn't pick up another Gaiman until, I think 2021, when I read American Gods, and I fell in love with American Gods, and now I've read like a ton of Gaiman. Actually, no, it wasn't. It was Ocean at the End of the Lane that I read and loved. And then I read American Gods, and now I've read like a million, and I really like them all. And I'm like, maybe I just wasn't prepared for who Gaiman was as an author at the time. And so I wonder, because this is one of his most popular ones, so I wonder if I reread it, if I'd feel differently. Now, there's a chance I wouldn't. I read Sandman very recently, and it wasn't my favorite Gaiman. I only gave that 3 stars, so it might be the same. But that's one I think I am going to revisit, just to see if I feel differently about the book, now that I have a little bit more Gaiman experience and kind of understand his way of writing. Okay, and that's all I've got for you guys today. 4 books that I feel very differently about when I first read them to later. I would love to know if this has happened with a book for you, if you read it and either disliked it or liked it and then changed your mind on it later. Any opinion on the 5 books I talked about? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like these kind of videos, please like and subscribe. That is the best way to support me. And if you want to see what I am currently reading as well as other nerdy rants, you can check me out on Instagram at bookborn.reviews. I'll see you next time. Bye.